Okay, welcome. Thank you, Malcolm Harrison, for joining us, CEO of SIPS. Why don't you start by just giving a quick introduction? Who are you? Who is SIPS?
Okay, so SIPS is the Chartered Institute of Procurement and Supply, which is the professional body serving the procurement and supply profession and the professionals who work in it. And our role is all about education, training, improving capability.
Fantastic. You've been kind enough to make a journey over from the UK for us. What was the motivation for coming over and taking part?
I guess there are a couple of reasons for coming over. I mean, the first one was it's been great to be able to talk about the journey that we went through in the UK with the Crown Commercial Service, where we tried to address this challenge of how do you, without getting a mandate, how can you leverage scale and skill, expertise in procurement to drive, better value for taxpayers.
Yeah.
And then I was really keen to spend some time in Australia, actually, and in New Zealand as well.
Great.
And I think they're two different countries. But to spend a bit of time down here and work on how we as SIPS can better engage and be more relevant to professionals working in procurement and supply down here.
Fantastic. And just going to the Crown Commercial Service to start with, what were some of those big challenges that you saw, and I guess what was the outcomes when you were able to make some of these key changes?
Yeah, I think the big challenges were around focus. And how do you get the focus on the right things? There were challenges around capabilities. So what do we need to do to get people with the right skills? And then there was a big challenge around data. So how could we get hold of the right data, accurate data that allowed us to inform decisions, and particularly data that allowed us to be able to show that what we were doing really was driving real value.
Yeah, and what was some of the real value that I guess came out the back end of that?
Well, the first thing that came out of it was not doing things which you weren't best placed to do. So we spent quite a lot of time getting rid of activities, processes which should never really have been in the Crown Commercial Service in the first place.
Yeah.
But that was difficult because various departments had sort of been sold the concept of the Crown Commercial Service and expected that the Crown Commercial Service would do certain things for them, which actually Crown Commercial Service shouldn't really have been doing for them. So we actually had to transfer back to departments people who had been transferred from departments into the Crown Commercial Service. And that's not easy, because you had to get people to accept that they hadn't got it right in the first place. And look, Ross, the model was right, or the concept was right, the way it was being delivered was wrong.
Yeah.
So that was probably the biggest single challenge, was getting the model right, and then ensuring we had the capability and the systems and the data to be able to support that model.
Okay. And then having stepped outside of the public service and now working with SIPS, what change do you feel you're able to affect from that role?
Well, interesting. The thing I probably be honest with you, the thing that I find most is I'm actually able to affect real change here. Because you're in an environment where it's a small organisation but with a very broad reach. So you're able to make changes yourself. I have a set of trustees, there's an appropriate governance structure in place, but ultimately you are the decision maker.
Yeah.
Whereas in the public sector, for all the right reasons around public scrutiny and the fact that you're spending taxpayers' money, there were pretty complex processes that you had to go through before you could make a decision.
Yeah, and how do you go about getting that alignment within the public sector, whether it's across, agencies or jurisdictions, and there's obviously a lot of stakeholders to engage. The feeling is that if you can better collaborate, that the outcomes will be there. How do you make that happen?
Oh, look, I think you have to be able to demonstrate the value that you are delivering. You have to, because I don't think mandation on its own ever works, because if you mandate people to do a certain thing and then they get a bad experience, they're going to find ways out of it. They're going to find ways of not conforming and saying, well, I'm different. Defence is different, so I need to do it in my way. And then you don't get the value that you should get from leveraging scale and expertise. So you have to be able to demonstrate value. And then you've got to follow that up with good service. So as long as you get that focus on service, such that people they get a response on time, they get a high quality response, and you have to listen to what your customers are saying. So when you're not getting things right, listen to that, understand the reasons why, and then take action to correct those. But it's that combination of delivering value and delivering it with really good service.
Yeah, makes sense. And speaking as candidly as you feel comfortable, what's the biggest difference, if any, that you've seen from the way the UK is currently operating to what you understand about the Australian market and even your time in New Zealand?
Yeah, look, I think the big difference in terms of the public sector and procurement is that the UK, for now, is operating on regulations which are a drill down from the EU procurement directives, which are pretty burdensome. My sense is down here, probably more in New Zealand than in Australia. People take a much more pragmatic approach. New Zealand operates with a set of guidelines. I think Australia operates with a set of regulations which are more aligned to WTO. But in both instances, both situations, neither is quite as onerous and cumbersome as the UK. Yeah. And I think that helps. It also, by the way, puts more of an onus on having people with the right capability. And the capabilities that you need today in procurement and supply to deal with ethical sourcing, to deal with eradicating modern day slavery, to deal with ensuring there's no fraud and corruption in supply chains, to ensure you're embracing the sustainability agenda, those skills are much, much greater, much more complex, much broader than they used to be. So yes, have an environment which is more pragmatic, more guideline based, less rules based, but then you're going to have the people with the right capabilities.
Yeah, and just out of interest here, I mean, how much of a role is social procurement playing now within the UK, in the general market, and the government?
Well, increasingly.
Yeah.
It's not just in the UK, and it's not just in government either. Yeah. So you've now got some large private sector organisations who are also looking at social value. And looking at not just focusing on profit or not just focusing on global sourcing, but actually thinking about, well, what can we do locally? What can we do better locally? How can we better engender our organisation with the people and the environment in which we work? And that's happening in the UK. I think the UK government is starting to mandate it within their procurement. I would expect that you'll see that happen in other organisations, other countries as well. I think it's even more interesting though when you start getting private sector organisations doing it. When there's no legislation, they're doing it just because they actually think it's the right thing to do. And perhaps it goes back to perhaps one of the biggest changes that I think we should all recognise in the environment that we work in today, where you've got citizens and particularly younger consumers who are making decisions on what they buy, who they buy from, who they work for, investors thinking about who they invest in, based in part on the ethical track record of those organisations.
Makes complete sense. And this is your first time with us, so thank you for making the journey. We're currently based in Australia, New Zealand, Canada, and the US. We're hoping to make the long hop back to the UK at some point with the network. How have you found today as an experience? Yeah,
no, it's been a really good day. I think these events are never easy to put together, and I always admire the thought that goes in as to who you have speaking and on what topics and how you fit those all together, but also the sheer organisation of the event. I think you guys have done a great job today. It's a great facility, but you've done a great job in bringing the whole thing together. So well done.
Fantastic, thank you. We'll leave it there. Malcolm, thanks for your time.
Not at all. Thank you.